The night was cold, and I had been working late at the hospital again, lost in a whirlpool of medical charts, test results, and the wailing of patients. As a doctor, I was accustomed to long hours, but this night felt different, as if a sense of doom lingered in the air. It was as if the world knew what was about to happen, and I was its unwitting pawn. I lived in an old, crumbling apartment building, the kind that had character but desperately needed renovation. The place was seeping with history, both good and bad, and I often found solace in the knowledge that generations had come and gone here. My apartment was on the 3rd floor, and as I approached the entrance, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Inside, the flickering fluorescent lights gave the hallway an eerie, surreal ambiance. My footsteps echoed as I climbed the worn stairs. I was on the brink of exhaustion, and all I wanted was to collapse onto my bed and forget about the world. But fate had other plans. I reached my apartment door, my tired fingers fumbling with the key before finally unlocking it. Stepping inside, the familiar but worn furnishings greeted me. I kicked off my shoes, tossed my coat over a chair, and with a heavy sigh, I fell onto my bed. The weight of the world seemed to disappear as I closed my eyes. Minutes turned into hours as I drifted into a deep slumber, lost in a sea of dreams. It was a blissful escape from the worries that had plagued me earlier in the day, but the tranquility of my dreams was soon shattered by a harsh, intrusive sound that pierced through the haze of sleep. Bolting upright, I struggled to make sense of my surroundings. The shrill wailing of a fire alarm echoed through the apartment, an urgent call to action. Panic surged through my veins as I leaped from the bed and rushed to the door. Smoke seeped in from the hallway, and the acrid scent assaulted my senses. As the realization hit me like a tidal wave, I knew I had to act swiftly. The once comforting hallways of the old apartment building were now a maze of danger, and I had no choice but to confront the fire that had suddenly engulfed my world. My heart raced, and in an instant, all fatigue had vanished. I had to get out. There was no time to grab my personal belongings or even to think. I stumbled into the hallway shouting for help, and in the chaos, I saw a figure emerging through the smoke. It was a firefighter, clad in a heavy black suit with an oxygen mask obscuring their face. "Come with me!" the firefighter shouted, extending a gloved hand. Without hesitation, I took it, grateful for the lifeline. As we descended the stairs, I stole a glance at my savior, the one who had come to my rescue. He moved with an eerie grace, his steps sure and deliberate. But what struck me as odd was that the firefighter's presence didn't match the urgency of the situation. He seemed too calm, almost serene, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. Finally, we burst through the front entrance, and I gasped for breath in the cool night air. I turned to thank my savior, but the firefighter was gone, lost in the chaos of the fire brigade and first responders. I couldn't shake the sense of unease that clung to me like smoke. How had that firefighter arrived so quickly? And why did he seem so composed in the face of the raging inferno? These questions gnawed at me, but in the midst of the chaos, I had no time to dwell on them. The days that followed were a blur. The fire in my apartment building had left many homeless, and the local news was abuzz with speculation about the cause. Arson, they said, or a gas leak. The investigators were working tirelessly to find answers, but all I could think about was that firefighter who had saved me. I inquired with the fire department, hoping to locate and thank my rescuer. However, what I discovered sent shivers down my spine. According to the fire chief, no firefighter had arrived at the scene when I was pulled from the building. They had been en route and hadn't arrived until minutes later. It was impossible. The firefighter who had saved me was real, and they had been right there, guiding me out of the smoke-filled building. I was certain of it, and yet, no one could confirm his existence. I began to dig deeper, to search for any information that could shed light on this enigmatic figure. The more I delved, the stranger it became. There were no records of a firefighter going missing or dying in the line of duty in the recent past. It was as if the firefighter who had saved me simply didn't exist. My life had become consumed by an obsession to uncover the truth. I had become a recluse, researching every detail I could find, digging into old newspapers and talking to any firefighter who might have been on the scene that night. No one knew of the mysterious rescuer. The apartment building remained off-limits, deemed too unstable for investigation, and the cause of the fire remained officially undetermined. But I knew in my gut that there was something more to it, something otherworldly. One evening, as I sat in my dimly lit apartment, my thoughts spiraling into madness, I heard it, a faint whisper, like the rustling of leaves in a breeze. I strained to hear, and it grew clearer. A name, a voice from beyond the grave. It was the voice of the firefighter who had saved me. "Doctor," it whispered, a hauntingly familiar voice that sent shivers down my spine. "Doctor, you tried to save me." The words echoed through the room, and I was frozen in terror. It couldn't be real. It was impossible. But there it was, the voice of the one I had failed to save as a doctor. "Who are you?" I stammered, my voice trembling. The response was a sorrowful sigh, as if the specter of the firefighter was right beside me. "I am the one you couldn't save. I am the one you let die." Tears welled in my eyes as the realization crashed over me like a tidal wave. The firefighter who had saved me, who had defied death and time, was the patient I had lost weeks before the fire. It was my patient, my failure, and he had come back from the grave. The presence of the firefighter, the spirit I had failed, became a constant companion. It spoke to me in the darkest hours, tormenting me with its tragic fate. I could feel the weight of its sorrow, the anger and resentment for my perceived abandonment. My life unraveled. I lost my job at the hospital, as the relentless pursuit of the truth and my increasing paranoia had rendered me unfit for practice. I became a recluse, seeking solace in a dimly lit room, trying to drown out the ghostly voice that haunted me. The firefighter's apparition became more pronounced, its visage appearing before me, standing in the midst of phantom flames. Its eyes, hidden behind the reflective visor, bore into my soul, accusing me of my incompetence, my inability to save a life. One night, in a fit of desperation, I reached out to the apparition. "I'm sorry," I pleaded, my voice quivering with remorse. "I did everything I could. I tried my best to save you, but I failed. Please, forgive me." The ghostly figure remained silent, its presence unwavering. Its gaze seemed to penetrate my very being, and I felt the weight of its judgment pressing down upon me. As days were passing by, I fell deeper into a state of despair. The ghostly firefighter continued to torment me night after night, with its accusations and unrelenting presence. It was as if it sought not only my acknowledgement of failure, but also my suffering. My life became a living nightmare. I was haunted not only by the firefighter's accusing presence, but also by the guilt that had festered within me for weeks. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being punished for my perceived failure. One day, as I sat in my dimly lit room, the apparition of the firefighter appeared once more, standing amidst the phantom flames. But this time, there was something different in its stance. It no longer exuded anger and resentment. Instead, it appeared weary, as if carrying a heavy burden. "I cannot forgive you," the firefighter whispered, its voice carrying the weight of the world. "It is not my forgiveness that you seek. It is your own forgiveness that matters." The words hit me like a revelation. The firefighter's presence had been a manifestation of my own guilt, a guilt that had been consuming me since the day I lost my patient. It was not the spirit of the firefighter that haunted me. It was my own conscience. Tears welled up in my eyes as I finally understood. I had been searching for absolution from an external source, but the only one who could truly forgive me was myself. I had done everything in my power to save my patient, and sometimes, despite our best efforts, life could slip away. With newfound clarity, I looked at the apparition and said, "I understand now. I cannot change the past, but I can choose to forgive myself for what I perceived as a failure." The firefighter's form began to fade, and the flames around it started to dissipate. In the dim room, the only presence that remained was my own. I was no longer haunted by the specter of guilt, and the weight that had burdened me for so long began to lift. In the days that followed, I began to rebuild my life. I sought therapy to help me process the trauma and guilt I had been carrying. I reconnected with friends and family who had been worried about my descent into isolation. I even found a new job, not as a doctor, but as a medical consultant, where I could use my knowledge to help in a different way. As the years passed, the memory of the firefighter who had never existed faded into the background. It had been a construct of my guilt, a manifestation of my own sense of failure. I had come to terms with the fact that I had done everything in my power to save my patient, and sometimes, despite our best efforts, we cannot change the course of fate. I learned to forgive myself for my perceived inadequacies, and in doing so, I found a sense of peace that had eluded me for so long. The guilt that had haunted me was replaced by a sense of purpose and a commitment to living my life to the fullest, in honor of all those I had treated, including the one I had lost. In the end, the firefighter who had never existed had been the catalyst for my own redemption. I had saved myself from the relentless torment of my own guilt and had emerged from the ashes of the past as a stronger, more compassionate person. The memory of the firefighter remained as a reminder that forgiveness, in the end, must come from within.